Hello again, my name is Quinn Hogue, and I will be going over how to use our control GUI for the robotic arm now. If you watched the previous video, you should have seen how to set up and get to the desktop screen, which is shown here in the background. And we also described how to either just have that done remotely or over or locally, just using a mouse and keyboard plugged into the Raspberry Pi. So let's get started here. So if you are on the desktop and you want to run it, you would just click on the file over here, which says robotic arm startup script, and it would start it up for you. You also have the option of, if you again were running in the debugger, you can work on it there and then step through and check issues with certain stuff. But for the simplicity of it all, I'm going to actually just close this out, disconnecting from that. And I will just be running this directly from the desktop screen. So what you want to actually do if you're going to run this on the desktop, because you want to have the terminal so you can get some information that is just printed directly to terminal. So you want to hit execute in terminal. And when you do that, that props up this terminal here, but also gives us our control GUI. So in the settings here, we have some parameters that can be adjusted and saved. I'd recommend just leaving them alone. They're the min and max values for the axes, and they act to help to limit the possibility of crashing the robot, but it does not protect 100%. I want to emphasize that enough that, you know, if you're going to control this thing and you're going to use it, you're taking responsibility for it. So as you kind of figure out how it works, I would do it really slow and just try to be careful. We do have a kill switch here. So if this kill switch is pressed, when it's running any of the other operations, it'll pop up on the screen, say kill switch pressed. It should stop the motion of the robotic arm, and you should be good from there. And then our other screen we have is our controls and testing. And as you saw there, when it does that, it should actually open up the gripper fully. And then the first thing you're going to do if you're starting this up from scratch, now I already kind of have this started, so let me simulate what it would look like is starting from scratch. So usually when you're starting, the gripper is going to be in this position just due to the weight of the servo, and then it has to be set and zeroed. So the first thing you want to do is come in here, and you usually set it to about like 125 roughly. And then you would click this button here to move the axis to that set position. And then if say it needs to go a little bit more, you bump it 1 degree. That looks pretty level. So now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to hit 0 axis 4, or you could hit 0 all in this case. And then some other options you can do. So you could just also, like some of the ways you can control this is you actually have the gripper control accessible just from the GUI right here. So you can just open and close that. And then you can also put in, say, I want to make the base rotate like 25 degrees. And then make this rotate up 10. And then make the elbow go up 10. And then let's do 90 degrees of wrist rotation. If I do this, it'll step through each one, and it will actually, so first it'll move the base, and then the shoulder, and then the elbow, and then the wrist. So you kind of have to keep that in mind when you're moving around using the arm control function here, because you could end up in a situation where you could have axis hit each other. So it moves that position, the speed update. And then you also can, close your gripper and stuff. But I'm actually going to reset this back to 0 on everything, which is another good thing that the move arm to set value can be used for. You do have to be very, very cautious though, because these boxes, when you can type in them, do not mind the limits set by the settings page. So you could end up actually crashing the arm very easily. I know what they are, so I'm just going to set these back to 0, and it should move everything back to where it started. Keep in mind, it does move in that same order. I'm actually just going to also type in here, and I'm going to simulate hitting the e-stop while it is moving. So if I tell the wrist to rotate 90 degrees, come here and hit the e-stop. Oh, I didn't quite catch it in time. That wrist does move pretty quickly, so it actually was done before I even hit the button. Let's do that again, and I'm going to use my extra hand here to try to hit it a little bit quicker. So that time I hit it. So it did stop all the action. And it should have popped up a message here, but it seems to have not done that. So there may be a bug in the code that should be fixed before you guys do it. Normally, if you'd press it, it would pop up a message say error, would you like to continue? But in this case, it did not. But if you just press the button, it will continue. So then going from there, another option of control that we have for this would be, well, actually, let me show you how you can actually, let's just prove the point that you can type a negative value in here. Normally the shoulder does not let you go negative, so you have to be very careful with this. So you see that's a negative value in there, big no, don't do that. Because if I were to hit one of these buttons, you see it actually zeroes out. And then if we were to look back at our settings page over here, we'd actually see, the minimum for that is 0. So keep that in mind whenever you're doing this stuff. Now let's move on to the enable live control. So we hit that, we get a pop-up message. It says you're enabling control of the individual axes, and it's going to be live. Use caution. Do you want to continue? By clicking this, you're taking responsibility for the control of the robot, and you again are at increased risk of possible damage. So moving on here, we can then use, now it's in live mode. So once I hit run, it is now moving if I click these buttons. So if I hit, adjust position 10, you can click it a couple times too. You don't just have to click it once. Sometimes you actually get a little bit smoother movement if you click it a few times. So if I then rotate like the elbow up, and then we now have a example of it moving around. Then I can, also rotate the smaller increments are real good for a little bit of like fine control, but they're not very good at like being smooth. So I prefer to use the 10-degree buttons because it moves a little smoother. But you have to be more careful because you can, if you click it too many times, you can end up in a situation where, oh, it's into the table. And that's when you really want to have somebody manning that, kill switch, which is right here. Or there's actually e-stop on the actual program controls itself. So if it's moving and I hit that, it actually stops it. And then it should pop up an attention box. It says retry. If I hit retry, it should continue doing what it's doing. If I hit cancel, it'll exit out and it'll pop up another message. So let's hit retry. It actually switches this back to paused. So then it gives us another opportunity to, double check that what we're doing is okay. And then if I hit run again, it'll finish its operation. Now, if I hit this e-stop again, we can still see what that's that pop up again. And then let's hit the cancel. To cancel, we get an information pop up here. So all motion stop, please attempt to reset the position of the arm by manually moving the axis slowly while powered down and resetting the pie and controllers. Or another option is to reset the e-stop to regain control and then use the combination of moving the axis using, that's worded a little bit right there. But by using the move arm to set values button. So if I hit that, we should reset the e-stop. And then now I should be able to, reset this back to 0. I'm just going to do that as an example of what you do. Now, if you think you possibly lost steps, I don't recommend, going right to 0, because it's possible it could still crash. So you should be careful with that. And, maybe move almost to 0 and then see how close you are. And in that, if you're where you need to be to re-zero it, I would say then, zero the axes and make that the new 0. But we're just going to hit the 0 here. And the next thing I want to show you guys is you also, with the live action, have the option to record movements. So what you want to do is you want to enable the live action control, and then you want to hit record movements. And then when you hit the run button, it'll pop up this dialog. You can either give a new file name or you can write over one of these old files. So I'm going to actually write over this test4 here. It's going to pop up a thing and say, do you want to overwrite it? You're going to hit yes. And then you have live control from there. So if we hit, let's just go 50 degrees that way, 50 degrees that way. And then let's go back to 0. Actually, let's open the gripper and close the gripper a couple times too. See, you guys can see that. And then we are gonna go continue going back to 0. So let's roll the shoulders back. 0. And then we're gonna move the elbow back to 0. And then return the base rotation. And then I recommend, if you're going to record movements, to make sure that it kind of ends back in the starting position, because then, from there, it makes it easier and you don't have to manually zero everything every time. So once you're done, you can either check this off and then continue just using the live control once you're done recording those movements, or you can just stop the live control and that will also save the file. I'm just going to disable the live control, and that puts us back. And then you set enabling motion playback. If you click that, it pops up a thing. Do you want to continue? Then you click your test. I actually recommend coming up over here, and you can actually, I recommend opening the file that just recorded, just scrolling through the values a little bit, make sure everything looks right. I did have an error where it recorded a very high value the one time, and that caused the arm to crash and break, and it was not a very fun time. So, try to use caution. Let's see. No, I don't see any outrageous numbers here, so I think we're probably good to go. If you look at this, you'll see there's actually a lot of values that are in between the two maximums that you want to get to, and I've written a sort of algorithm that kind of goes through that and tries to pick out the important values to limit the number of steps that are needed to complete the movements. So if I hit open, it now has opened the file, it's processed it, and now when I hit run, it should start the movements. Again, I'm going to be here with the kill switch, and I can also hit it on the screen just in case something looks like it's going to go wrong. So here we're going to run it, and then that should be the end of it. I'll wrap up with a few details. And that should be it. So let's run this. So as you can see, it did almost everything we wanted to do. It seems that we're still having some issue with the actual gripper. If desired, you guys could look into rewriting that algorithm and try to improve it to make sure that everything's getting recorded right. Also, or I should say, that's in the the live access control function. Make sure everything's getting recorded correctly, and then possibly look into writing a better algorithm for trying to eliminate the extra steps and making sure that all the options are in there. But if that does happen, worst case scenario, you just have to hit close and it will act like it's closing, and then you hit open to reset it and it will go back to its position. And that should about wrap it up. And then if we were to have any like axes not communicate correctly or something like that, we'd actually see a pop-up message come up in this terminal. But in this case, we have everything connected correctly, so we didn't get any messages. And as long as that terminal stays clear, that's probably a really good sign. I hope you guys have fun with the robotic arm and enjoy, learning about robotics, and can hopefully improve upon what we've given you guys as a base.